You're with the hard facts from the CNN News 18 Federal Bank Prime Time studio. Viewers, we are our own worst enemies. The Prime Minister is at the G7 today in Italy, representing rising India that is poised on superpower status. Instead of rallying behind the Prime Minister, a cantankerous debate has been sparked by the opposition questioning the appropriateness of, in their words, an ek tihai or a one-third Prime Minister representing India. Clearly, in their refusal to accept defeat, the opposition led by the Congress has forgotten that Prime Ministers from within their own ranks, with an even lesser mandate, have not just attended but meaningfully represented India at G7 summits in the past. By the opposition's logic, even British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and US President Joe Biden, who look set to lose impending national elections in their respective countries, would have no moral right to attend the G7. Ever since 2019, India has been invited to every single G7 summit meet. So much so that there's talk that India might even be invited to become a permanent G7 member. Now, viewers, look at what the opposition has been saying, despite India's rising clout. And let me quote Jairam Ramesh, who is, of course, the most visible face of the Congress party in the public domain. He says, a one-third Prime Minister doesn't acknowledge history. Since 2003, India was invited for G7 summits, salvaging his diminished international image. That's the reason why the Prime Minister is attending this particular summit meeting, says Jairam Ramesh, who is, of course, the head of the Congress communications cell. Gaurav Gogoi, Congress MP, who is also cut out for big tasks in the upcoming Lok Sabha, says, amid the NEET row, the NEET row, Prime Minister has left for G7 summit, implying that he's neglecting his duties at home. Then you have the Samajwadi Party, viewers, the ally of the Congress, an important stakeholder of the India alliance. The gentleman on your screen, Mr. Abbas Haider, says, PM Modi's policies have failed India. He's using events now for image management. Now, what the opposition is not telling you is that India's heft has risen astronomically under Modi since 2014. It is also not telling you that Modi is not representing himself in Italy. He is in fact there because he happens to be the head of the executive of one of, if not the most respected nations of the world. Bharat is in demand today. It is the #1 global success story without exaggeration. It is growing much faster than any other large economy. It has the fastest falling poverty rates. It has, viewers, a huge demographic advantage, a productive population that is going to power growth to the point where it could even become the world's largest economy by 2050. It isn't India that needs the G7, but it is the G7, viewers, that today needs India. Before you accuse me of talking up the prospects of our own motherland without basis, let me introduce you to the indisputable hard facts which I always bring to you, viewers, so you can get closer to the truth, to the fact of the matter. Here is why the G7 needs India, viewers, not the other way around. First of all, because of India's rising influence. India's crucial role in world affairs boosts the G7, bolsters the G7, especially as the UNSC faces decision-making challenges. Remember, viewers, the UNSC itself is losing both vitality and relevance because it is stuck, because of vetoes, etc. It's immobile, doesn't do very much, it's paralyzed. So increasingly, other organizations, other alliances like the G7, for example, play a more critical role. And they need India, viewers, to provide that ballast. Economic clout, viewers, India's economic clout is much higher than it was ever before. With a GDP higher than UK, France, Italy, Canada, and poised to overtake Japan soon, India strengthens the G7's declining economic clout. In the 1980s, the G7 accounted for nearly 60% of the world's total GDP. But this has now dropped to about 40%. Yes, viewers, 40%. By some tabulations, the BRICS comes close to G7. Here's another fact, viewers. Democratic values. India's democratic ethos aligns with the G7, offering a responsible alternative to China's authoritarianism. Remember, viewers, we are coming out of the 2024 general elections, where Mr. Modi has been denied a full, simple majority. What does that tell you? That far from being in decline, India's democracy is actually, viewers, robust, and there are enough checks and balances to stop anyone from misusing the levers of power. Here is another hard fact, viewers. Global South representation. India bridges the gap with the Global South, incorporating perspectives from developing nations into global decision making. This is where it's at, viewers, in the Global South now. The West is, as you can see, it is pulsifying. It's in decline. Its economy splutters. The EU itself is in a shambles. China, as you can see, viewers, is also going through economic hardship. Its economy slid down. It's no longer the fastest growing, largest economy. That's India, viewers. And there are prospective other economies in the Global South that are catching up, poised to race ahead. Here's another fact. Strategically, geopolitically critical. India is fundamentally critical, viewers. India's presence counters China's influence, providing a strategic partner for the G7 in the Indo-Pacific region. And demography as destiny. Among all the G7 countries, only India's population is young while others are aging very, very quickly. Now, first, viewers, before we get into the political debate, let's figure out what really is on the Prime Minister's mind as he heads into this particular summit meet. And we are joined by Harshvardhan Shringla, who's of course been the former Foreign Secretary of India, very well poised to give us some definitive answers. Let's keep the visuals of all the meetings that the Prime Minister has undertaken over the last few hours. He's met Maloney. He's met, of course, the French President Macron. He has met Sunak. He has met, I think, his German counterpart also, and you can see all those pictures, the Prime Minister there. He's also met the Pope, at least shaken his hand. There's supposed to be a pull aside with him. So, Mr. Shringla, are we right to conclude that the G7 that needs India, that the opposition is wrong when it says that, you know, we are going there and the Prime Minister is going there to only burnish his credentials and doing image control? And if you think that I'm right in concluding that the G7 needs India, I'm asking you, why is this the case?
Well, India has become a very major player on the global scenario. I think Prime Minister Modi's own status, his ability to contribute on issues of global importance have already been proven time and again, whether it's during the COVID crisis, whether it is during the G20 presidency of India, whether it is in terms of contributing to finding solutions to global challenges, whether the Ukraine conflict or the Middle East issue. I think Prime Minister Modi's perspective is a different perspective. It's a refreshing perspective and one that the world appreciates and definitely wants to see India as a part of any global decision making that is taking place, whether it's in the G7, G20, whether it's in BRICS or Quad or the SCO. I think India straddles that ideological space pretty north and south and east and west today, with Prime Minister Modi very much at the focus of global attention.
Well, that's why our top bands, viewers, if you look above you, our top bands actually encapsulate what Mr. Shringla is saying. Now, I want to ask you, Mr. Shringla, why does the G7 feel the need to invite India every year? I know it's an extension of the first question, but could you elaborate?
Well, I think it's also linked to the first question. The G7 understands that the developed countries by themselves have a certain limit in providing solutions to global challenges. They need to co-opt very prominent members who constitute today's multipolar world, whether it is India, whether it is countries like Brazil and Argentina, whether it is countries like, South Africa or Indonesia, but India certainly is at the forefront of countries that not only provide a perspective which is, let's say, different and one which I think in many senses seem to have the answers to solutions or to challenges that the developed world does not always find, but also in many senses we are seen as representing the aspirations of the developing world, the global south. We are also, I think, very much a country that is contributing to issues that are relevant to today's world, whether it's technology, whether it is issues like migration, whether it is issues like soft power. I think today's context, India's contribution is very, very clearly and tangibly recognized. Look at the G7's agenda. The G7's agenda is the Mediterranean and Africa. And these are areas which are India's extended neighborhood. We've been very involved with this region, and we can provide perspectives that I think will be very, very welcome in this meeting. And the other issues which are important for the G7 are energy and food security. India is a major consumer of energy, a major purchaser of energy, and at the same time, major producer of food, whether it's wheat or rice, can also contribute very effectively, whether it's artificial intelligence or technology, which are also on the agenda, or migration, we are in a position to contribute. So I think Prime Minister Modi's presence and India's participation in G7 meetings since 2019 have been almost de rigueur now because of our contribution. We are not there because of the representation factor. We are there because we are able to make that vital difference in contributing to the global agenda.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Shringla. Let me open this up. Thank you for joining me. Let me open this up. Let me bring in Mr. Brahma Chileni. Needs no introduction. Foremost strategic affairs analyst. We also have with us, of course, Abhijit Iyer Mitra, also someone who's an experienced hand at looking at global affairs. We have with us a Congress leader, Nikul Patel. First, Mr. Chileni, let me ask you, what do you make of this argument that is being pushed aggressively in Indian domestic circles? That, look, the Prime Minister is some kind of an interloper here. He is diminished, his mandate is diminished, and therefore he is no longer in a position to represent India meaningfully. First of all, how do you address this?
That's very odd for anyone to say that. First, this summit represents an excellent diplomatic platform for bilateral interactions with a host of leaders. The real value of this summit is in the opportunity it offers to hold a series of bilateral meetings with other leaders on the sidelines, which is why Modi and the other non-Western leaders accepted Italian Prime Minister Meloni's invitation to attend the G7 summit. So this is a very rich venue where you can interact with world leaders on a one-on-one basis. And this is an opportunity that no one can say no to. The second is that the G7 as a grouping is in decline. It's declined because the G7 member states' share of the global GDP has been on the decline. Their economic strength declines, so their global clout declines, and the relevance of the G7 itself is being questioned in the West. So in this context, what did the host Prime Minister Maloney do in order to accept the new realities in the world, the fact that the world has changed, the balance of power is shifting? She invited prominent non-Western leaders, including the leaders of India, Brazil, Turkey, and the UAE. That's how Modi is there at this summit, because he represents a very important voice in the global South, which is why India was invited. And Meloni also invited Zelensky and the Pope, who's been calling for a ceasefire. Zelensky wants an unending war, and the Pope believes that a ceasefire has become imperative. The Pope can play the role of an honest broker. But unfortunately, the G7 isn't interested in peace. Its member states are getting more and more involved in the Ukraine war. We can see that from the US just in recent weeks, and also from the developments since yesterday at the summit. At the summit, for example, Biden signed a 10-year formal security agreement with Ukraine, offering Ukraine tangible US security guarantees. He also unveiled a $50 billion loan in quotes, for Ukraine. Actually, the loan is a gift because it'll be repaid not by Ukraine. It'll be repaid from the stolen interest earned on the frozen Russian central bank assets. Russia calls this thievery. This is a clear violation of international law. And the EU, for its part, separately has approved confiscating and sending to Ukraine this year up to 4 billion euros of interest income on the frozen Russian sovereign assets. So we can see how the very countries that talk about rule of law, they talk of a rules-based order, are engaging in confiscation of central bank assets, which traditionally have been considered to be sacrosanct. You can't touch those assets.
Right.
But here they froze those assets, and now they're sealing the interest on those assets.
You know, that's a slightly more tangential. That we'll follow. We'll come to that. What is the agenda, etc., etc. But let me bring in Abhijit Iyer Mitra. Why, Mr. Mitra, would an A-grade, or someone who fancies himself, let me put it like this, as an A-grade intellectual like Jairam Ramesh, make such a statement? He says, the Pradhan Mantri flying to Italy today to salvage his diminished international image at this year's summit. Why would he round off his commentary with such a comment?
Look, Rahul, it's been very clear for quite some time that this is the kind of commentary that Rahul likes, Rahul approves of, and Rahul promotes within the Congress. He likes them nasty and vicious. And Jairam's a perfectly nice person who, in a competitive world has to outdo all the nastiness and the viciousness that comes from there. The problem, of course, is one of logic. First is that this invitation was given well before the election, and it was to the Prime Minister of India. Who is the Prime Minister of India today? Narendra Modi. How many seats has his party won? About 245. How many seats has his coalition won? 296, well over the halfway mark. There first is the question of who the invitation was to. Second is the validity of who represents India, and in Parliament, very clearly, that is the Prime Minister. If the Congress has an issue with it, it can call for a no confidence motion and see who the legitimate representative of the Indian people is at the moment. The third issue out here is the sheer gall, of saying, look at the party that this is coming from. 99 seats, which is its third worst performance, pretending to be a victor. Even Sitaram Kesri, who was locked in the bathroom and kicked out of the Congress party presidency, got more seats than Rahul Gandhi did. even Narasimha Rao in his second election got more seats than Rahul Gandhi did. Even his own mother, who presided over the previous lowest tally of the Congress party, 114 seats, got more seats than Rahul Gandhi did. His own two-term prime minister, Manmohan Singh, was prime minister with how many seats? 140 something and 206 seats. So what was Manmohan Singh then? By all logic, if we go by the Congress party's own record, see, we should never measure the Congress party by the record of Modi or anybody else. We need to measure them by their own record. By their own record, it is their historic third lowest. It is one of their lowest vote shares. What do you expect? I mean, it defies all logic. This is calling into question serious constitutional issues. It's fundamentally refusing to admit that there is something called coalition politics that has been going on in this country for the last 30 years. And this is how prime ministers are in this country, right? It's perfectly fine, but I hope the Congress party knows what it's doing, because it's essentially setting the stage for some kind of a civil war. It won't be new for them. They've, minions of the Congress party have been encouraging riots and all kinds of things for quite some time. So it's fine. I mean, they know what they're doing.
Okay, let me bring in Nikul Patel. Nikul Patel, what are you doing exactly? Are you trying to undermine the Prime Minister and, by extension, India's ability to push a narrative? What exactly are you doing? What is this Ek Tihai and he's, going there to burnish his image, this, that, the other? What do you think Dr. Manmohan Singh was doing? He wasn't even in control of his own, by all accounts, his own government. Do you think he was actually peddling Pakistan's agenda or somebody else's agenda, or was, one chothai? What is this illogical nonsense?
Okay. Rahul, first of all, I would like to bring hard facts to the viewers as well as to the people of the country. India, the second largest population in the world, that attracts the most of the developed countries to be the biggest market they can find. Second thing, the youngest average population that you find in the country, so that you can hire them for the outsourcing things, what other countries want. Third point regarding the carbon credit, because internationally all countries are facing the environmental issues and they want their production lines to be put at some place where you can find them. Now, when we see the conflict between the China and the international developed countries, especially America, they find that now China, we cannot rely on China, and we have to find an alternative. So that is why the countries like US, Europe, Japan wants to find an alternative, and that is why we are being selected. And if you see, the Make in India concept is still not flying colors. We are still depending on China for so many things. Now, these are the hard facts that entire world knows. But what happened in the elections? Definitely, the government didn't find the majority, and today, when Modi ji is going there, definitely he will try to cover the things that, okay, this happened, we are not able to find it, but we are having a government. We are now not Modi Sarkar, we are NDA Sarkar. And that is what Jairam Ramesh wants to convey to the people, that, okay fine, he's going good, but he's not.
I think I made a mistake by suggesting that someone was an A grade something or the other. I mean, are we suggesting, Professor Cheleni, that everyone is calling us because there is a neo-imperialist or neo-imperialistic conspiracy to turn India into a dumping ground, and that the Prime Minister doesn't enjoy any form of autonomy here because he doesn't have a mandate, though somehow he runs a coalition government where the BJP has 240, which is about 32 short of the halfway mark, and actually can pass pretty much any law he wants in this country. He doesn't need 330 or 400 par to change any law. I mean, if this is the logic, then I rest my case. And if you agree with it, then I think we should just quietly say that Mr. Jairam Ramesh is the A-grade brain that he fancies himself to be.
Rahul, much weaker coalition governments in India have delivered major reforms. They have delivered economic boom, very high GDP growth rates, and we had a coalition government with much lower numbers in the Lok Sabha. that turned India into a nuclear weapon state just 6 weeks after it came to office, talking about Atal Bihari Vajpayee's government. By comparison, the coalition that Modi leads has far better numbers in Lok Sabha. It looks more stable, and you can make out from the composition of this new government led by Modi that is actually largely, it largely consists of people who were in his second term. So there is continuity, there is stability, and we should not forget that this could be Modi's last term in office, because he's already 73 and he may see this as his last term, and he's going to be a bolder. He'll try to fashion a lasting legacy.
Yes.
So for all this talk that Modi has been humbled, as the New York Times said, that his grip on power has been weakened, the fact is he's very much in control of everything, as the composition of the government has shown, as the appointment of key aides has shown, and that we can expect Modi to prove his critics wrong. The other point that I wish to make is that Indian foreign policy traditionally has been driven by bipartisan consensus at home. I don't think that bipartisan consensus in India has unraveled, despite whatever remarks are being made by irresponsible people. The fact is that if you look at, for example, the Ukraine war, there is a bipartisan consensus in India that India ought to stay neutral and independent. So this is not just the Modi government's approach. This is the approach, the thinking of people across the political spectrum.
Right.
And I think Indian foreign policy will continue to be run on the basis of bipartisan consensus in India.
Well, I mean, if one can help, that is the opposition, who seems to be living in denial. But viewers, it's been fascinating. It's a great conversation. And look how close we came to electing the Congress party that says that any investment is the handmaiden of neo-imperialists. So if you're business people out there, viewers, this is what the Congress represents: a completely anti-capitalist point of view. Think about that the next time you go to vote, which could be very soon. We'll take a short break, viewers.